Working hard in the night, but in the morning light, truth will find us.
All right, this is the Evan Ginzburg Show at VillageConnectionRadio.com. Jim Savalli, our owner and engineer, at the helm. And we have an eclectic mix as always. Later in the show, we have adult educator Steve Mason. We have music producer Bill Maher. But right now, we have my co-host, poet John Winnell, and singer-songwriter Mimsy Mack. How are you, Mimsy?
I'm great, thank you.
There you go. And you have a big gig this afternoon, so tell us about that first off.
Yeah, we'll be heading here to Hank's Saloon. We'll be playing a set there. So just excited to be here and bring my music from Virginia.
Virginia. So you traveled all the way from Virginia today?
Yes, I traveled up Friday.
Friday.
And I'll be leaving tonight.
Okay. And you've had an interesting weekend, multiple gigs. Tell us about what you've been doing.
So last night I had the honor of being at Sidewalk Cafe. I was the opening act.
Okay.
For the Alan Merrill Trio. And
Is that on Avenue A? Is it still open?
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And it's just a great group of people. The music is incredible. And a big shout out to Bill, who's going to be up for putting together today for me. And
okay. And I believe, I could be wrong, Michael McHugh books Sidewalk Cafe?
Actually, my friend David Tanner and Kip, they booked it for me.
But
for
I believe
event.
Mike does sometimes.
Yeah, Mike books. They're also very well-known venue. And tell us a little about yourself. Who are some of your musical influences?
Growing up, I was raised in a home where my dad was a classical violist.
Wow.
Actually, I trained at Eastman School of Music in Columbia. So he brought the Yankee to Virginia. So I was raised surrounded by people in and out of our house. My older sisters were into rock and roll, so I kind of listened to all of that. I kind of do air guitar, with my sunglasses on when I was 12. But then I got married, had kids, became a physical therapist, got divorced, got sick of physical therapy as a profession, and found myself singing at nursing homes and getting better results with live music.
They say that music is very therapeutic. They've actually been using it with Alzheimer's patients, and they say that you could have somebody who's totally oblivious, and then you play a song that they recognize and they snap out of it briefly. And it's very therapeutic music.
It's been phenomenal. When I was working as a physical therapist, I'd walk into a room, scrubs on, laptop, stethoscope, could get nothing out of the individual. I walk in with a guitar and familiar and unfamiliar tunes. I had people dancing, shaking maracas for an hour. And the most fascinating moment was when I was playing to the same adult day center. They come and go. They're there for the day. And I've been singing to these same people for twice a week for a year or two. And then one of the ladies they all had memory challenges. That's why they go to this facility. Right. One of the ladies asked if I could sing the song that goes like this. And she started to say the words. And I realized, that's my song. So she learned one of my songs that she obviously had never heard before.
How terrific is that?
So, and they've kind of changed a lot of my music style because they give me feedback. I call them the Prime Plus Band. So they're really, so they've changed my life. Music has changed my life. I see how I call this is the best medicine, the universal language. My goal is to keep going with using music as a way to reach people that are unreachable.
Music heals depression.
Well, it's always been.
Yeah.
You think. It just complements. And sometimes it's a feeling that you don't necessarily have to have the language, but it evokes many different things. Of course. No, it really is a universal. It originally was for communication purposes anyway. And music does communicate anyway. There's always the best things tell stories, so why not?
Definitely.
So they say that 4 out of 5 Americans hate their jobs. So if you find your
I
job
love my
rewarding and love what you're doing,
And I work at Guitar Center now, and I love that job. So I pretty much, yes, love what I do.
that's awesome, because you're one of the rare ones that can say that. And
glad.
later we'll be talking about the teaching profession, which there's a lot of unhappy people there for various reasons, but we'll save that for later in the show. So who are some of the singers you listen to?
I love Pink,
Okay.
and I think her lyrics are just profound. Like I like all the, Lady Gaga. I also am influenced by B.B. King.
Yeah.
I'm all over the place. I like Garbage, the
band.
The band.
Not literally.
Not literally.
Yeah.
And I think because I have the classical background, I sometimes listen to that. But I just think I like I'm a lyric. I like to listen to the lyrics, and so
Awesome.
yeah.
So who are your favorite songwriters? I mean, John, we always talk about Bacharach and Elvis Costello, and
There's so many great songwriters, but you were talking earlier, not recently, but in Brazil, Jobim,
oh yeah,
the famous Waters of March.
yeah, beautiful song.
But there's so many. I mean, Jacques Brel is one of my favorite all-time songwriters. But then you have the interpreters. But here you have, I guess everybody thinks maybe the 60s really were the time for where everything became focused on the singer-songwriter. Joni Mitchell, Graham Nash, of course, Dylan, Joan Baez. Was more of an interpreter than anything else. But Pete Seeger, well, that's even earlier. But there's so many. So who do you? I guess you mentioned some of the contemporary people.
Yeah, I mean, I love Fleetwood Mac. I think
they've gone through different transitions.
Yeah.
From being an original blues group, Peter Green, he wrote Black Magic Woman, that
Wow.
of course Carlos Santana made famous, but that's Peter Green, and it's a whole different feeling. And they went through a lot of changes too. Everybody knows Stevie Nicks, Christine McVie, and Lindsey Buckingham, but they started with Peter Green, and then Bob Welch, Sentimental Lady. I mean, that's a whole. They went through a lot of different transitions, Fleetwood Mac, until they really became like superstars with the Stevie Nicks stuff, which is what most people really, I guess, know.
I think
it's
so
all
too.
good, though. It's all good and also different. That's like Al Cooper.
Oh yeah.
Another guy that's just like a chameleon who started Blood, Sweat, and Tears, but was in the Blues Project and other. I mean, I heard that he was having trouble with his vision, but I know he was teaching out in Berkeley, in Boston. I saw them one summer recently. I used to see him at the Bottom Line all the time. But Al Cooper, I remember playing for free in Rockefeller Park downtown with faculty guys from Berkeley, and they just tore the roof off.
Yeah,
It
he's
was
the real
just
deal.
amazing. Yeah, it was
Nice.
great.
Very cool.
So Mimsy, what are some career highlights? Gigs that are memorable, people you've played with?
Gosh. Well, I was at Hank's Saloon, actually. I was trying to figure out what year it was. It was a 9/11 benefit. And I came up with 3 of my kids, and they played. So I was the front girl, and my son was on drums, and daughter were playing guitar. And
It's like Willie Nelson, right?
It was-
Family affair.
yeah, so whenever I play with my kids, because I have amazingly gifted and talented kids, then those are my highlights.
You're like the Cowsills.
Oh, yeah, the Cowsills.
Kind of the
Cowsills.
Partridge Family.
The Partridge
for it. Yeah,
Family.
that's
The Partridge Family were based on the Cowsills.
Is that right?
Yeah,
I guess that makes
absolutely.
sense. Yeah, that makes sense.
Absolutely. Yeah. And tell us, you have on your chair there various CDs.
Oh
and
yeah, I have
what
a
do you-
little merch for you.
Okay, and
So-
show it for the camera. Okay.
Where's this? Here.
Jim?
Here, this camera.
Right.
So this is my CD that I self-produced. My friend Damon did he put this together for me. So this is my photography. This features 8 of my originals,
Wow.
and I think I will be performing all three of them today. And
Okay.
the first one, it will be the title track song, Wake
Wow.
Up.
And what does the cover symbolize?
That's actually my feet. My guitar is at the beach. The beach, I live off the Chesapeake Bay in Virginia Beach area.
Oh, nice.
And so that's where I go to. That's my go-to place to kind of get settled and centered. And so the song, just music has helped me realize things, and just the when you look in the horizon and see how vast it is, and there's hope there. So wake up, it's time to live, is I guess the idea.
John's a poet. John, I'm sure, would appreciate that. Those
sure.
images.
Nice. They're in there. Boy, I remember going to driving over the bridge, with my family, God knows, many years ago. Chesapeake Bay Bridge. It's really beautiful over there. Beautiful part of the country.
It is very
You're
beautiful.
lucky to live around there.
Yeah, we enjoy it very much.
There you go. So, what else do you have there?
I got my matching business card for you.
Okay.
I liked making little. This is one of my bumper stickers. I do like Batgirl.
Wow.
Who doesn't?
Look at that.
So, and this is my music for the senior citizens, or when I go nursing them. So, Eminem music melts in your heart and in your mind.
Oh, that's nice. That's nice.
Hope there's no copyright problems there, and then I have a guitar pick to leave with you with my name.
Wow, thank you. It's very, very nice of you. She bears gifts all the way from Virginia. Awesome. And you're going to do a short set for us?
Yes, I am.
Any social media you like to plug?
Oh, I love I'm Mimsy Mac on Facebook, Instagram. They're my faves.
You're the first person I've ever met named Mimsy. Yeah, that name, you don't hear that name too much.
I've met people that say they know someone named Mimsy.
Right. Okay.
But I'll tell you one fact about the name Mimsy is Neil Simon wrote Plaza Suite about a girl that locks herself in a hotel bathroom on her wedding day, and her name is Mimsy.
Wow.
I met Neil Simon. God, he was the nicest man.
They said he had Alzheimer's at the end. Sad, yeah.
He was the nicest man.
Neil Simon just passed.
Yeah, very sad.
Yeah, Neil Simon was like the king of Broadway. He had one hit after another.
The funniest, it was amazing. He was talking about how, he's, his Jewish family, his brother's name, which he based The Odd Couple on, more of his brother than, I can't remember the brother's name. It was this Irish sounding name. So he would tell a line, how is it that we have these, names, from this Jewish family? So he said, County Cork by the way of Minsk or something like that. It was pretty funny.
Yeah, he was funny, but his later work, had a lot of heart and soul to it.
Yeah,
really.
I saw a number of those. Put Matthew Broderick on the map, made him a star early on. Broadway Bound and Brighton Beach Memoirs.
Yeah.
And he wrote for Sid Caesar with his brother. I mean, can you imagine being, being in that room?
Yeah.
Mel Brooks, Larry Gilbert.
You never have that much comic genius in one room again.
Neil and Danny Simon, and they said Mel Brooks was the funniest guy in the room, and he's on all the time. But
he's in his 90s.
He's still great.
Yeah, sharp as could be. Mimsy, plug any social media, anything you want to plug.
Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn.
Okay.
And those are my 3 I use the most.
Okay. And tell us about the set we're going to hear in a few minutes.
I'll be singing 3 originals, just representing different times of my life.
And do you write better in good times or when you're in pain? Because
good question.
Yeah, like Marvin Gaye, who was brilliant as any singer-songwriter that ever walked the face of the earth. He wrote best when he was in love, and he wrote best when he was in pain. So it was like two sides of a coin, When things were just like normal, he didn't have that inspiration.
Probably true for most people.
Yeah.
Yeah, I would say my probably 3 most emotional songs were based on emotional experiences. But I've had peculiar times because I don't sit down to write a song. I describe it as giving birth. It just comes to me. But one time I wrote one of my saddest songs with very, really tough lyrics. And I was happy. I was having a great day.
Yeah. Well, it's
that was weird. It came out really slow. But so I think for me, there's no rhyme or reason. It just when it comes, it comes.
Yeah, there you go. All right, so we're going to take a very brief time out and set you up for a 3-song set. So when we come back, Mimsy Mac live in studio. This is the Eclectic Mix, known as the Evan Ginzburg Show at VillageConnectionRadio.com. We'll be right back.
Raceway bound on the ride to Dover. Guns, colognes, and porn all over the streets were replete with signs of the times, designed by the violence, the money-hungry mind that said, I'm wondering how this could possibly be. Firefly, follow me right down the street. Free love, soul flow is the prime goal. Emancipate your mind, baby, watch the show. Where you laugh at our dreams. Those who die to live a dream with me. If we believe we can roll, your opinion matters no more. You're wasting your time and also mine with your sarcastic disbelief. If only you could know what it means. When you laugh at our dreams, I can't help but believe. Here we fall, then we fall. Man, there's some good company. Those in tight are with me.
All right, we are back with the Evan Ginzburg Show at VillageConnectionRadio.com, live in studio, Mimsy Mac. All right.
So much, Evan. Oh, I'm so honored to be here. This is my first song on the album called Wake Up. Why do we wake up checking Facebook again? Why do we clear our emails but not our minds? Why do we wake up smelling coffee? Add some cream, please. Why do we wake up smelling roses from someone else's bouquet? Whoa, someone else's bouquet. Whoa. Why do we wake up not seeing the sunrise? Why do we wake up with tears in our eyes already? Why do we wake up at all sometimes? Why do we wake up feeling every shade of blue? Whoa, every shade of blue. Whoa, count your blessings one by one. Shout their names out loud. Count your blessings one by one. Shout their names out loud. Why do we wake up feeling like a bitch? Why do we wake up like an old wicked witch? Why do we wake up forgetting all of our loves? Why do we wake up not knowing that we are dust? Whoa, knowing we are dust. Whoa, count your blessings one by one. Shout their names out loud. Count Count your blessings one by one. Shout their names out loud. Count your blessings one by one. Shout their names. Shout their names. Shout their names out loud. Thank you so much. Upon request, the next song I'll be doing is called I Was Told. I was told that it would be fine if you don't lose your mind and you love all mankind. It will be fine. Why do they say that? Everyone knows it's a lie. Life is for enduring. Then we say goodbye. I was told that it would be fine if I don't lose my mind and I love all mankind. It will be fine. Who among you loves me? Is it everlasting? Passion after passion, real or relaxing. I was told that it would be fine if we don't lose our minds and we love all mankind. It will be fine. Life is what we're doing. Love is what we're needing. Passion after passion, keep our hearts from bleeding. I was told that it would be fine. It'll be fine. It'll be fine. Just fine. Thank you so much. I have one more song for you. This song is called Don't Stop Me Now. I am alone again, it's blinding. Where am I headed to today? My path is darkened and there's no one here. I've got to press on anyway. Here I go, don't stop me now. The moon will guide me all the way. Don't stop me now. The moon will guide me all the way. I'm not afraid to carry on. Discover life every day. People will come and people will go. The laughter sometimes turns to tears. Today is now, yesterday is gone. Release that paralyzing fear. Here I go, don't stop me now. The moon will guide me all the way. I'm not afraid to carry on. Discover life every day. Don't stop me now. The moon will guide me all the way. I'm not afraid to carry on. Discover life every day.
Mimsy
so
Mac.
much.
And
Thank you.
plug your gig one more time this afternoon.
I'll be at Hank's Saloon between 4 and 6 o'clock tonight.
And where is that?
Brooklyn.
Okay. Hank's Saloon. And when we come back, we're going to be speaking to music producer Bill Maher. So don't go anywhere, folks. We'll be right back with the Evan Ginzburg Show. Thank you, Mimsy.
Thank you so much.
You got it. Okay.
Round and round, it's all she knows. Play the part of being used. The more she hides, the more I show. I wanna be abused by you. Your body's like an undertow. You're drowning everything in me. The way she moves, the way she knows everything I need. This night, she shines like diamonds. So fine, so high, so low. I fall down, but only 'cause I'm wasted. I'm so down with everything she's taken. It's like the more you break me, the more I like to take. Round and round, it's all a show. I'm the one that's being used. The scars are just the afterglow of living on a fuse. This
we are back with the Evan Ginzburg Show at villageconnectionradio.com. And from New Century Booking, we have music promoter Bill Mayer, not Bill Maher. He cringed when I said that. Right. He leans a little more right than I do. So
Right or wrong. Actually,
Bill Maher, you mean?
I have Mike McHugh, who's a friend of Evan's here, who
never heard of him.
has been on the show several times.
Nah, that never happened.
We work a lot together. Matter of fact, we have several shows coming up in November at the Red Lion and shows at Bitter End. And I think there's even going to be one he's doing. Mike is also going to be in one at Sidewalk Cafe in the end of November.
Mike has been promoting ever since right after Abe Lincoln's assassination. He's been out there a long time.
Yes.
And I love Michael McHugh. And
he was on the poster where they hung John, where they burned John.
He was
Wilkes
the poster
Booth,
boy.
right?
Yeah.
That's right. He was first row ringside for the Wilkes hanging. He's been out there promoting forever. You gotta love Michael McHugh.
Yeah.
Michael McHugh is like straight out of like the Beatnik era. Like he's you gotta love that guy. He loves his music.
Good singer-songwriter in his own right, too.
And you know what I like about McHugh? We went to see Timothy Dark, who's a hip hop act.
I was at that.
You were at that also. And Mike, he's not one of these guys who are like, there's been no good music since the Beatles. Oh my God, I hate that. You see some middle-aged guys, they're so rigid. They're so...
Which is false. There's been plenty of good music.
Timothy Dark's the real deal.
Timothy Dark is really good.
Tremendous, yeah.
Nice guy, too.
And that was at the Highline Ballroom, which is actually a pretty good venue over near the Highline in Manhattan. It's not that easy to get in there.
I'm going to see Avery Sunshine at City Winery.
Cool.
January 1st. That's how I'm going to start the new year. But I also saw her at the Highline Ballroom, Timothy Dark. I've been there many times. Beautiful venue.
Interestingly enough, Kip Elbaum and Dave Tanner, who were involved with producing Mimsy's Sidewalk show, which others were at last night, including Alan Merrill, also produced the show Tim Dark was in. So they get around quite a lot. They're people I know of who they produce a lot even more than Mike and I do, but they're pretty good people too.
And none of us here are kids, and you support Timothy Dark, a hip hop act, and that's great.
He's more than just hip hop. He's a whole stage presence.
Oh yeah. He has a rock
He's
band
got a whole
behind
floor
him.
show.
He mixes genres, and I just think I'm always impressed when somebody, like you were saying earlier, you appreciate Zydeco. You appreciate everything.
Well, just a little background. I came into music a lot in New York. Well, I was always into music as a kid. Beatles, growing up, we all grew up, things like that. When I moved into the city in the mid-'70s. Irish music was in revival, and that was one of my first loves. I had friends who were involved with the Irish Arts Center, which had opened up at that point, given it was a vacant building in Hell's Kitchen, Manhattan, given by Paul O'Dwyer for like $1 a year. They produced a lot of shows in the Irish arts, including a thing called an Irish session, or session in Gaelic, which is actually a jam session of people who do free-form Irish music, traditional, sometimes ballads, and that tradition goes on to this day. And I was involved with, first with the Irish Arts Center, then we had kind of a breakaway group, and we founded the original session downtown at the Eagle Tavern, which went from like almost 20 years. And it also helped spawn other nights of music there, including like a sea shanty night and other folk music acts. So we've kind of put the Eagle on the map out of nowhere.
So how important is it in 2018 to get people out to live gigs? I think people sit in front of their TV with the surround sound, and they don't want to deal with the miserable subways, and they don't want to deal with the parking, etc., so on. I find it's hard to get people out to live gigs.
Well, not only that, last Monday, New York City had, for the first time, hearings on small businesses surviving in Manhattan.
Yeah.
My city council person, Corey Johnson, is the head of the city council. I'm in his district, and I've been pushing like heck with email and otherwise for him to make a special case for music venues within that umbrella of other small businesses, because we've lost so many. And this year alone, we lost B.B. King's.
P.B. King's.
We had
Ridiculous.
something that the city winery is being taken over the whole block by Disney, and it's going to have to move like a year or so.
Wow.
Is that right?
That's right. And then we also lost a thing called the Cafe Vivaldi, which was a great place in the West Village, which is
Yeah,
around
yeah.
for like
I
25
was
years.
there.
Great place for small locale music. Had open mics there. Others are in danger. Matter of fact, where Mimsy's going today, Hank's Saloon. It's a bar that's been around 50, 60, 70 years. It became a mecca of country western music and related stuff, and sometimes some punk over the last 25 years. That is going to have its last show just before New Year's of this year. They were spared several times over the past few years from the closing, but the real estate interests have finally said that's it. They're going to be moving into a new venue, actually an old venue, because in Manhattan there's a place called Hill Country. That's over in Madison Park. They had a sister restaurant in downtown Brooklyn, right near J Street Borough Hall, that lasted about 3 years, but it closed up recently because I guess lack of traffic on the weekend, foot traffic, because that's mostly court systems and stuff like that.
Right.
And Hanks has cut a deal through, I think Elbaum and Tanner, they're involved with that because they do sound there too, to move the Hanks operation into part of that building. And it will be not Hanks as we know it, but still Hanks in name. It's going to maybe be more restaurant-y and a bit less of a kind of a dive bar, punk rock bar. That's kind of when Hanks charms. It's got the old kind of like divey thing. I mean that in a good sense.
Yeah,
You know,
sure,
like
sure.
a Cheers, a laid-back music place. But my friend Sean Kershaw has been running a honky-tonk brunch there for about 2 years now. The last one's going to be December 16th of this year. And Mimsy's going to be playing over there later today at the 4 to 6 hour. His band does a show there from 1 to 4. And so if anybody's listening here who's a musician, come on down for the... I won't say it's an open mic, but it's kind of more of a jam session-y thing than Sean's actual band.
And as far as promoting shows, what do you consider some of your greatest achievements?
Well, I think going back about 30 years, we had a non-profit group that broke away from the Irish Arts Center. They had their own Irish activities going on for many years. Never had an actual physical building like the Arts Center, which was a drawback. But I think producing this session on a consistent Monday at the Eagle Tavern for close to 20 years was a big thing.
Yeah, that's a good run.
As
20 years.
Well, not only that run had continued. Once the Eagle closed, they moved it from bar to bar, and it's been going to some form of fashion on a Monday almost 40 years now.
Okay, so I'm going to pontificate for the next minute or two. I booked Gizzy's 16 West 8th for several years, along with Michael McHugh.
Correct.
And part of the reason it closed was the obscene rents, but it goes beyond that, and that was a music venue for those who don't know. You'll get people that come down to a club, and if it's no cover, no minimum, they'll get a glass of water and milk it all night. Meanwhile, they have a $700 computer, laptop, they have a $700 cell phone, but to buy a drink in the club, they break into a cold sweat. Tip bar comes around, they don't want to throw $1 in the tip in the tip jar. So it goes beyond the greed-monger real estate interest. People have to come out, support a venue, spend a few bucks, just like they would to pay some obscene amount of money to your cable company or some other form of entertainment. You have to keep these venues alive, because John Winnell and I probably went to B.B. King 75 times, 100 times. Some of the greatest nights of our lives was seeing these world-class acts, and it was heartbreaking to see that place go under. And Gizzy's, I actually worked there, and we had so many wonderful artists of all genres there. And one by one, these places close, and you're charging $10,000 a month for some hole in the wall, just for rent. It's a little ridiculous.
One of the things with this news, well, the city had 1 day of hearings, so I'm hoping they'll have more. And there's some plan afoot, God willing, to give some small businesses, I don't want to say comparable to rent stabilization in New York City, but something along those lines so that they can have some way of being able to get, say, a 10-year lease, and when the lease comes up to
Not to double or triple it, which is
quintuple
mercenary.
or quadruple it.
Or
That's more like
quadruple it. Absolutely mercenary. And for those who don't know, a New York politician, the real estate interest are the guys backing them many times.
Yes.
So they're beholden to the real estate guys, not to, hey, let's preserve the arts in Manhattan. So what happens? The Manhattan venues close down. They move to Brooklyn. The rents in Brooklyn skyrocket. So they'll move to Staten Island or God knows where.
Which is actually what is happening.
Yeah, it's exactly what's happening.
and
And
when you
Long Island City, they're trying to come there.
Long Island,
but-
yeah.
and when you think about it, something like the old where Bob Dylan started out down on West 4th Street. What was it called again? The
Folk City.
Folk City. I mean, a lot of these small clubs were in a good sense,
Put the mic a little to the side because you're getting a little.
a lot of these small clubs were, in a good sense, breeding grounds for music, working out experimental music material, stuff like that. Dylan wouldn't have got his start if there hadn't been clubs like this back in the day when he was
Of
coming up.
course. Of course.
Well, everything was, it was a whole different world back then,
Yeah.
and people, they had open hootenannies, and it was a folk revival, so that's more complicated, but it's true. You know, then rents were $35 a month in New York.
Yeah,
You know,
it's a different world.
It's a whole different world.
But
50 years later.
but a music fan will go out and spend hundreds of dollars to see some past their prime arena act, and then they'll go, oh, I'm not going down to that club and paying a 2-drink minimum. You know, it's like selectively poor. If you love music, go out and support it.
Yeah. This is also affecting, besides performance arts, I know that there's a big folk-related dance community in the Irish community. One friend of mine who I help out sometimes produces shows of Cajun Zydeco background, bringing bands up from Louisiana. They play up at Connolly's in Times Square. Thank God that's a place that's given them a home for a long time, because she's wandered around over 25 years and places closed, got to move someplace else. But even having a dance community, both the people at the Irish Cayleys in these bars and her dance community, they bring in their bottled water. Instead of supporting the bar.
You cheap scumbag.
And good luck having them buy a meal there,
buy
too.
a drink.
You know, because she has to
buy
pay.
a bottle of water. Right?
Buy a bottle of water. Support the
They
venue.
bring in their
Oh
own.
my God.
Yes. This is where it's at, unfortunately. So in terms of supporting the arts and getting people out, because that's a problem too. I mean, our mass transit is a mess. You can't guarantee after midnight when you'll get home
Yeah.
or how.
And that becomes part of the factor. I love music. I go out all the time to hear music. But sometimes I'll go, wait a second. This set is starting at 10, so inevitably it starts late. So then I'm on the train at 1 in the morning, and I'm like, it's a horror show. So you know, everything has to work hand in hand, you know, because especially if you're from the outer boroughs. I live in Queens, so you know, if I want to see something, I'll go see it. But many times it's not easy.
I think just to, since I know we're going to wind down soon, just some of the venues that still exist, I'd like to kind of tick off where people can go.
Sure.
You have Barcord, which is on the Cortelyou Q line. That's at the corner of Coney Island Avenue and Cortelyou Road. They support the arts fantastically. They've been around about 10 years. I think they own the building. Not only do they pay the artists there, you can hand around a tip jar and do both, and that's a good place to go, and it's pretty well known. You've got places in Manhattan like 11th Street Bar, which is where carried on a lot of the Irish stuff about 10 years ago, and other nights have spawned from that. Tuesday, Wednesday, Monday, and Thursday. And they have a really nice back room and a back line. A lot of bars don't have that either, where you can plug in instead of bringing your equipment in. Right. In my neighborhood in Hell's Kitchen, you have the Wayland Bar, named for Waylon Jennings. My friend Aaron Blue just played there on Friday. They are kind of a sports bar, but they do have music. You just got to check their Facebook site. I think in Brooklyn, Hanks would have been a place, but that's going to be closing
How many
soon.
nights a week you out hearing music?
It depends if my friends are playing and I'm free that night. I work at the Intrepid Museum with wacky hours because sometimes I'm just too dead after my job to go out. But if I think it's important, like when Aaron played at Wayland, it's in my neighborhood. I went out and saw her. Support her
So
show.
on an average week, how many times would you hear live music?
It really varies because sometimes I get more money if I
It's
work.
a math question.
Math question?
No, I'm joking.
2, 3.
2 or 3.
Yeah.
Okay. So
Two or
you
three.
are an exceptional supporter of live music to be
Yes.
out there. I love music. I probably do 50 shows a year, but that's not 2, 3 a week. So that's more like 1 a week.
Well, what I kind of started doing once Facebook started, I kind of was out of music for a while and I got back into it. And I started using just my iPhone, going out and recording people's gigs or segments of those gigs, putting them on my Facebook site, and they've been picked up and carried to other sites. So that's kind of a good way. And I've got a lot of video now documenting people who've been experimenting new songs, working on new material, or if they play places.
I was talking to these tremendous blues musicians the other night. I was at a live show in Connecticut. Chris Anino, a film producer, he put on a beautiful vaudeville convention, and we had live blues musicians. And they were telling me it's virtually impossible, unless you're Buddy Guy or Jeff Beck or whomever, to make a living playing blues. It's virtually impossible. It's basically a vow of poverty. Some do it, but they're a select few.
Well, you should tell that story about Hubert Summerlin, backstage on some ratty couch.
Yeah, we went down to Chicago Blues, which also has been shut down. And Hubert Sumlin, the great Howling Wolf guitarist, is sitting on a couch. It looked like dogs had eaten it out in the street. That's how ratty the couch was. And you're like, this is a virtuoso artist, and people have to...
Keith Richards played for the funeral, right?
I believe so.
Yeah.
So, music needs more respect. And New York is supposedly the music capital of the world, and to lose one club after another, it shouldn't be like battling to keep these places alive. One, the rents have to get under control, and 2, people have to come out and support.
Well, that's why it's this very special category of small business in New York City. It is arts and culture. And this isn't just pubs or bars that may have music. Sometimes there are comedy clubs at risk. Sometimes there are performance spaces at risk. People would produce plays. It's across the board. But I think, and I've tried to get my city council president person on board with the idea, to give small business venues that are arts-related, culture-related, music-related, a special category within that larger umbrella of the movement to get small business to have more chance to survive.
So you're like a champion of music. Much respect. Much respect. I just go out and buy a ticket. You're out there fighting. Boy.
Oh no, I'll go out. For example, I went to Town Hall to see Roger McGuinn do the revival of the Sweetheart of the Rodeo.
Wow.
Yeah, 50 years later.
Wow.
I'm a big fan of Steve Earle, who's coming in Town Hall in September. I go out to shows too. But again, even like City Winery, which is a bigger venue, that is going to have to be moving in about a year.
And where are they going to? Do they know?
Someplace in the neighborhood, but I don't know. And when Disney's taken over that block, they're not even required to help them move.
Usually they go like 2 hours away deep into Brooklyn, and I live in Queens. It's ridiculous. Manhattan needs live music.
City Winery, he was the guy that owned the Knitting Factory.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Which moved to Brooklyn.
City
That had
Winery
about
won't.
3 different locations.
They want to stay in Manhattan. They
Good,
do.
good.
And they're down
Yeah,
at
yeah.
Barrack Street now in a nice location just below the West Village. It's ideal, good transport to get there. Nice, really space. And they put a lot of, also they actually have a functioning winery in the basement there.
Oh yeah, I love that place.
And they've
There's not a bad seat in there. The sound is pristine. It's a great club.
And they've even
there's also
spawned a
one
smaller
out in
club around the
California.
corner. I think it's called City. It's got a different name offhand, but they have that's for rising stars who are coming up. And
when I went to City Winery with John to see Avery Sunshine, I said to John, I saw probably 50 shows this year. It was the best show I saw all year. How great was that show?
She was great that night.
She did 2.5 hours. She whipped them into a frenzy. Every genre of music.
It's a great club.
Yeah, and there's not a bad seat.
Yeah.
So
Even the upper level down, whatever. Even at the bar, it's a nice club.
And the other thing, you know, I don't want to give all the club owners a pass either. Sometimes they have to promote a little harder. Don't leave it to the band. You know, the band's a bunch of kids, and that, you know, by the way, I'm gigging tonight. No, the club has to promote. Clubs have to get the word out too. You know.
Well, that's what I like about places like Barcourt. They have an active website, and when you go on, they even have, you can see by the month who's going to be in there.
Good.
And they have a link to the artist's website or Facebook page on that. Another good one is Freddy's, which used to be over near where Barclays Center is now. They fought Barclays for 7 years to stay open. It was in the newspapers. Now they're down in Park Slope, down in the South Slope. And they're another music mecca.
They said with social media, you have to hear something 7 times for it to even register. On October 28th, Mimsy Mac will be at. You have to hear this again and again, because there's such a bombardment of information. So, you know, you can't just have some 18-year-old, 20-year-old kid go, "Oh, I got a show tonight." It's not enough. Yeah. They're playing in front of a room full of appreciative empty chairs. Many times.
No, a good promoter promotes club owner should be. That's part of the responsibility.
It all has to be hand in hand.
That's right.
And if it's just your website, you're preaching to the converted. You always want to expand the circle, especially if it's older acts.
Right.
If it's older acts, what happens? You know, somebody, you know, I'm not going out, it's too late, or I don't feel well, or whatever. You know, you have to promote the hell out of stuff.
Yeah. Another angle, too, because New York City still has so many musicians on the rise and kind of known, although not really super known, the lesser number of places around, it's almost like bars figure, well, let them, you know, promote themselves. We'll do minimal, just provide a space. A lot of them don't even have what they call a back line where you can go in and plug in.
Right.
You got to bring your own stuff in, you know, play with it and hope the sound gets tweaked right. A lot of musicians I know in groups go outside of New York. That's where the money's been made. Long Island, New Jersey, Connecticut. Because for some reason...
Big money's in Huntington, right, Jim?
Yes, Huntington.
Yeah.
Some of them played Huntington too. Yeah, right where we are.
Huntington's a money town.
Yeah.
Yeah. So anything else you want to plug before we wrap it up?
Well, I guess let me just some of the ones for New Century we got coming up. If I may mention them.
I like your glasses. You like.
Sorry about
them.
You're
like too hip for the
November
room.
14th, the Ian Bamberger Trio at Bitter End. November 17th, Mike McHugh's birthday party event. He's going to have Stephanie Spector, Mike McHugh and Sonic Arts, and several other artists. And that's pretty much it for November. December he's working on.
Mike McHugh is going to beat Trump in the next election.
One of my own friends, Luba Dvorak, who moved to Texas, he's playing at 11th Street next Tuesday with his band.
Is it Mike like running for president or something? Or?
No. Oh, and I should say,
just
a week from today,
it's like wrestling. It's a work.
My people, I really like the Haggard Kings, really good country band. They're playing at Superfine, which is the place in Brooklyn in the Dumbo, the down area between Manhattan and Brooklyn Bridge. That's a restaurant that has brunch shows on the weekend of a lot of really good music.
I'm going to ask a question that's going to make you 37 enemies. If it's a Saturday night, what are the 5 indie acts that you would most want to see? Now, everybody you leave off the list is going to hate you. Yeah.
First and foremost, my friends the Serpentones. So Sean Kershaw is the one who runs the Sunday brunch. I know them the best. I would say Erin Blue's new group. She just played.
Erin, E-R-O-N?
B-L-U-E. Erin Blue.
Erin Blue.
Yeah. Probably the Haggard Kings are probably amongst the ones, too. Another friend of mine, Mike Cobb and the Crebulators. They play a lot of places around Brooklyn. But another one would be Butch Phelps and the Elevators.
That's a great name for Butch Phelps and the Elevators. Yeah. That's a great name for a band.
E-L-E-V-A-T-O-R-S, I think. Not E-R-S. Yeah, Butch is a phenomenal songwriter. Really one of the most talented guys I know, and he's really an incredible musician. There's lots more, but that's named some of the few.
There you go. And I just want to
I should put a plug in the city, in Manhattan, Rockwood Music Hall.
Oh,
they
yeah,
have 3 places.
Venue.
The small place is the original. It's past the Hat, kind of a small room, but it's a great place for people to it's hard to get in there. If you're on the rise and known, you can get your foot in the door by playing there. And then next door they have Rockwood 2, which is a bigger hall, and it's like $10 cover charge, and a third one in the back. So you can kind of go from one and graduate to the other. I think they're going to be around for a while because they've been around for a while. I don't see that. That block can't do much more with gentrification than what they're doing.
There you go. And I just want to say something. When you get a live music show, especially somebody like Timothy Dark, you're getting every race, creed, color, age, every genre of music fan. And it's just like this like beautiful vibe to it all. And people should go out. Don't sit in front of your computer or TV every night of your life. I hear people, like I'm in my 50s. I hear people like, I don't go out anymore. Like, God forbid. Like, no, go out. Live a little. Your TV isn't like a sacred box.
Well, a lot of people also, I mean, they, with the subway delays in the morning and people working more hours now than ever before
Sure,
and
people
stuff,
are
it's
tired,
hard.
but
Yes, and it's
but there's Sunday brunches with music. There's Saturday brunches.
Precisely.
There's early shows on a Friday or Saturday.
There's so much
live a
to do.
little.
That's right.
Live a little.
To stay home and
John, how many shows do you estimate you see in a year? You're not a kid
100,
either.
maybe.
100. So that's like one every 3 days.
I'm cutting down.
one of the reasons I go to.
I do too much.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah.
One of the reasons I go to shows is because a lot of these people who are musical artists have become my friends, not just on Facebook, but
support
in real
them.
life. And, I feel it's being more on the cusp of music than being a musician. I feel the next best thing I can do is either help promote what they do or support what they do.
Clicking like isn't support. Bringing a bottle of water into a venue isn't support. Go out, buy a ticket, buy a drink or two, have a meal, support these venues. Because otherwise, they go on social media. Oh, I love that place. I used to go there, right? I used to go there years ago. Come on.
Right.
And also, if you are a
I think
Facebook...
I also read that my father's place, that legendary venue,
It's back.
It's reopening.
Is back.
It's
in
back.
the
It's
hotel.
open. Yeah.
Yes.
It's in the hotel, and
But not
and
the
he's
original
He's got
location.
some.
But they get world-class acts. NRBQ. They get
Yeah,
serious
they have
people in there.
They're booked. I
Yeah.
checked through December.
Yeah, we
I
have to
think.
go. We have to go down there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The Paramount on Long Island's a nice venue. In,
Yes,
Huntington.
Joe, and during the summertime, you have Jones Beach, which has a lot of outdoor shows.
Yeah.
There's still the Beacon Theater in Manhattan, although it's kind of... And Town Hall's been doing some more shows of late lately, which is a good thing, too.
But particularly the small clubs support them.
Yeah.
The
Mercury
Beacon's doing just
Lounge,
fine.
sure.
Beacon's
Yeah.
Oh, new one that's opened up called Coney Island Baby. It's on
Okay.
Avenue A around 11th Street.
Okay.
And they're starting to have stuff, too. You mentioned about Tim Dark Show before. Tim is unusual. He's got like about 7 or 8 members in his band. That's like almost like a floor show than just a mere gig.
Timothy Dark should be playing arenas. His stage show.
Thank you.
I happen to love and support hip hop. I mean, I'm more an R&B, blues, and jazz guy, but I love and support hip hop. And some of these guys, basically, they're grabbing their balls. That's their stage show. Timothy Dark has a great band, and he's the real deal. He's the real deal.
Yeah.
Go out and
He's
support
become
him.
a favorite of late.
Anyway, our buddy Steve Meyerson, not Meyerson, has been patiently waiting since the crack of dawn. He's been at 3 different wrong venues, so we're going to wrap this up.
Okay.
And anything else you want to plug real quick?
No, just that Mimsy's hopefully going to be coming back quite a lot now from now on. I'm going to see if we can...
She brought me 37 gifts, so she's always welcome here. Yeah. Yeah.
Well, she's been inching her way into the New York scene. So let's see if we can maybe broaden the scope on that.
Absolutely. So I just want to say I love Michael McHugh. He's my buddy, and
Ditto for me.
he's crazy in a good way. And whether it's watching Batman reruns for the 400th time, or I love Michael McHugh, and he actually got me the booking gig at Gizzy's, so which was a great experience for the most part.
And I don't know how often people even know your own background. You go back to the days of WBAI, I believe.
I was on WBAI for 16 years with the late great Fred Giabold, and
and
we had musicians on every time we were on, and 3 in the morning, which is actually a better time for musicians than 11 in the morning on a Sunday.
Yeah.
3 in the morning on a Friday after the gig, the musicians would always come down. And Fred was a beautiful person, and Mike knew Fred very well, also very well.
Yeah.
And
but I'm so glad you're carrying on this in a different format now.
Fred was my mentor. I mean, Fred taught me how to do radio, which is basically let the guests talk. Unlike Howard Stern and these other guys who flip it entirely, you let the guests talk.
Yeah. Well, it's been a pleasure to have a chance to come and talk about some of the different
It's better
issues.
than us murdering each other on Facebook with the politics. Yeah, we don't see things eye to eye, but you're a good man regardless.
I've become more what I call a purple leprechaun, because I have Irish background and a lot of green flowing through that. I'm not really left or right anymore, and especially since all the stuff going on this week, I don't know what to think anymore.
It's an insane world, and at any given moment, lunatics with assault rifles can burst in. That's why we have Steve Mason here. He's armed to the teeth.
Yeah.
He's going to protect us. Steve Meyerson, excuse me.
But just one last thing to take off as far as
Yeah.
Facebook goes, and this is for anybody who uses it, who is very active in putting their own political spin on their posts and all that. Some of my family supported Trump. I have cousins in North Carolina who love Trump. Others of my friends, musicians in New York, are the most diehard Hillary progressive left supporters.
And I'm
Sometimes
neither.
they cross paths on any given post. If I do, it just flips that way. Then all of a sudden they're shooting verbal spitballs at each other. And then they don't even know each other. It's absolutely crazy.
Well, Jim Savali, the owner engineer, is more to the right, and we're buddies, and you don't have to agree on everything.
Not anymore. I don't care anymore. I'm going to stay right in the middle.
Probably better,
They
right?
can all
It's
just- they can all
safer.
just do whatever they want.
Too much drama,
Roll
right?
each other up. I'm going to stay here in Huntington. I'm good.
That's right. He just wants to do radio. Radio's positive. Anyway, Bill, thank you so much.
Yeah, Evan, thank you so much. And for those of you who, Evan supports quite a lot of different things, from professional wrestling and WWF and other things, I guess.
I don't support WWF. I support the Indies.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, he's a well-rounded man,
Thank
and listen to his shows because he gives people a lot of good chance. Some of my friends have appeared on here.
Tell all your musician friends not to be lazy and get on a Long Island Railroad and come out here and get seen.
Well, I remember McHugh was complaining when last time Vanessa was on. We had to get an 8 o'clock train.
It was cold that day, and it's a trip, but come on out, Huntington
Okay.
Station.
Well, again, thank you, Evan, and
My pleasure.
all the best for the work you do with this. Really
My
appreciate
pleasure.
it.
Thank you, Bill Maya. And coming up next, after a brief time out, we have Steve Meyerson, who's devoted his life to adult education, and we're going to talk about that. So we're going to shift gears a bit. And can I just quickly plug our sponsor, SWF Wrestling, November 3rd, SWF Battleborn, live in Jackson Township, New Jersey. Jackson Township Fire Company #1. That's John Winnell's favorite venue, the Jackson Township Fire Company #1.
Next Monday.
That's right. And November 9, Pro Wrestling After Dark. And that's at Grand Plaza, Vineland, New Jersey. And November 17, SWF Wrestling presents Extreme Fallout at the Berkeley Little League in Bayville, New Jersey. And my goal in life, my last remaining thing on the bucket list, is to get poet John Winnell down to a wrestling show and experience that bizarre. I love wrestling. I love wrestling. And I just want to do a shout out to Monty and the Pharaoh. Thursday nights, 8:05 to 9:05. They have a wrestling show here, and they're going to have upcoming signings with Abdullah the Butcher, New Jack, Sabu, Larry Zbyszko.
I saw that little promo video of Abdullah the Butcher that they've been playing.
Yeah.
Did you see that?
Yeah.
I don't know if I want that guy in my studio. He scares me a little bit.
Abdullah's like
I think I might
a
have-
sweet
I think I
old
might have
man
bad
now.
dreams about him or
New
something.
Jack's the guy you don't want to get angry. Yeah. Abdullah's like a sweet old man. Don't worry about Abdullah. Anyway, Bill, thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Evan, for having me.
My pleasure.
Greatly appreciate
My
it.
pleasure. And you're both always welcome. And coming up next, Steve Meyerson, educator. We're going to talk education. which we don't often do here on the show, so that'll be interesting. All right, you're up. All right, Evan Ginzburg back with the Evan Ginzburg Show at Village Connection Radio, and we have poet John Winnell, who will do a set at the very end of the show. And John was a school psychologist, so he knows the school system. And we have Steve Meyerson, who basically devoted his entire adult life to adult education. And what are some of the pluses and minuses of adult education?
One of the pluses is that it provides a second or third opportunity for people who may have dropped out or not completed their formal education. Another plus is that things are changing so rapidly, so many new skills are needed, and education is important to keep up with a changing world with disruption in so many areas.
So they have computer classes and nursing and even auto mechanic. They have a variety of programs throughout the New York and nationwide.
Well, there certainly should be more. There are some, but there definitely should be more opportunities for adults.
I mean, why would we put more money into education when we can make more bombs and blow up small countries?
The reason is that it's cost effective.
That was a joke, Steve.
The
Yeah,
reason,
okay. Yeah.
I caught it.
Okay.
The reason is that it's cost effective to invest. If you invest a small amount of money and someone gets a high school equivalency diploma, that person now becomes more employable and able to make a greater contribution to his or her family and to the community as a whole.
And let me just give one specific example. We had an adult education student who was an immigrant, single mom, and she, for a couple of years, collected welfare. So many people she paid nothing into the system and she's taking money from the system. And I'm like, wait a second. She went through ESL 1, English Second Language, beginner, intermediate, advanced, got her high school equivalency diploma, went to college, okay? And yes, the American government helped her out, but subsequently she got a great job, and for the next 30 or 35 years of her working life, she'll be paying taxes and paying that back a hundredfold.
That's how the system is supposed to be
Exactly.
set up. Unfortunately, there are people that take it, but not that person.
Right.
That person took advantage and
In a good
bettered
way.
themselves, which
Yeah.
is really what it was supposed to be when it was originally set up as kind of a way to help out. You're talking about America. I mean, actually the country's in trouble again. People don't, because it's leaned over, but there has been various depressions in America, not just the big one from 1929, and Roosevelt basically set up the welfare, social systems to get people back on their feet so they could do other things. But I guess
So she struggled in her 20s, and from in her 30s, 40s, 50s, and 60s, she'll be paying that back, again and again and again through her taxes.
That's a success
and,
story.
yeah,
That's
a tremendous
really,
success story.
I mean, that's what it's all about. So you're giving people an opportunity. Maybe for a variety of reasons they couldn't get through high school or whatever. So you're helping out with a literacy, aspect, because in this day and age, you really need, you have to have basic skills to survive in the world, unless you're very disabled, and that's something else.
Yeah, there are people with severe learning disabilities, but they too can be productive in a variety of jobs.
That's true.
Right, Steve?
There's no question there's a place for everyone.
Of course. So what do you consider some of the flaws of the adult learning system, education system? There are success stories, and there are people that never get there. We used to say GED, now it's the task, TASC. There's some people that never reach that goal.
Well, they can't. You're talking about people that have limitation. There's a reason why somebody can't get through high school or middle school.
But what's plan B for a student that can't reach that goal?
Well, getting back to that question a minute ago, one of the disadvantages is that adult education, in particular, my area, used to be from the bottom up, where the purpose was to meet people where they are and help them reach their educational and employment and training goals. And now it's more from the top down, where a law is passed by the Congress and then the states push it down to the cities and the program providers, and it's more about looking good on paper and dictating what the students will do in the class, and not working from the bottom up and meeting the actual needs of the students.
So sometimes it becomes overly political, and the people, making decisions don't understand what actually goes on in the classroom.
Probably been that way for 50, 60 years, maybe the entire
school system, kids included.
I mean, the system at one time was very exciting, but again, the world has changed. Now we have automation, so a lot of people that are unskilled, it's going to be a big crisis. So that becomes something else. What jobs are going to be available for people that are illiterate or partially
certainly
illiterate?
Not poets.
Well, I think there's probably illiterate poets out there too.
That too.
I've certainly had to suffer or listen to evenings of
painful poetry.
Reasonably literate people, but as far as the job world, we live in more sophisticated times. Things are much more computer oriented, so you have to have people that can read, that can negotiate. But you could have a learning disability and negotiate a computer system. But who knows? With automation coming in, a lot of people, it's unskilled labor. It's going to be very hard.
We have some background noise.
That's the automation.
That's the automation run amok. Excuse me, I'm going to close this door.
And alarms are going off left and right.
Live radio, folks. Warts and all. So I'm going to flip this. If you were running things, veteran teacher, union rep, you were running adult ed, whether it's New York or nationwide, what would you do? What would you do differently?
First, I would go back to the way that things were when I worked in the field starting in 1979, right out of college. I would make it student-centered. I would not set up barriers to student achievement. I would not interfere with the educational process by having useless standardized math and reading tests, which only help the state, the federal government, and the programs to look good with their data. I would make it a student-centered industry and meet the needs of the students, whether it's employment, whether it's a high school equivalency diploma, whether it's training, internship, higher education, or just being more knowledgeable and literate to help children and grandchildren in the community. In many cases, the students are immigrants who need a little bit of help in reaching out to the community, being able to be financially literate in terms of knowledge of the healthcare system. So I would make it more student-centered and less data-oriented.
And speaking of data, all of this filters down to the poor classroom teacher, where somebody will say, your student attended 73 hours of class and didn't make gain. And as a adult educator myself, I would say, well, my student doesn't know what day of the week it is. He has traumatic brain injury, and his gain is he's not on the street getting in trouble. He's doing his best. He's in a safe environment, and he's working to the best of his ability. Sometimes you're just not going to get the gain that the powers that be want.
Those, what you mentioned, they're very positive. The other side of the coin, which is the positive thing, getting somebody off the street, giving them structure, trying to change.
But the politicians may not be aware of this.
Yeah, and maybe
they're like,
they
you
will.
Didn't do a good. Let me just say something about statistics in general. And you were a math teacher. Okay. Let's say, for example, Steve or myself or whoever the teacher may be, 2 out of 3 students passed their TASC, their task test. 2 out of 3. Okay? So if somebody wants to put a positive spin on that, 66.6% of the students passed. This is a tremendous teacher, tremendous program. Somebody wants to put a negative spin. 33.3% of the students failed. The teacher's no good. Fire him or her. The program's a failure.
Well, that's why
This is where the numbers are ridiculous.
But that's also why there's a big problem in the public schools, and the union leader is trying to be. I think the new contract, although I'm not involved anymore, is trying to recognize, and support people so that they stay in the system. So you're not getting it from both ends, where you have people from above pressuring people to do unrealistic kinds of things that would make them look good or bad, or it's always been political. Everything is political.
The students that have severe test anxiety.
You can't. You have to kind of. I don't know. And like I said, the world that we live in now. I think they're all great things that you said, making people more, financially, aware of how to negotiate. That's a benefit for on a personal level.
They should be teaching financial, as a math teacher. They should be teaching financial literacy.
It's hard, it's very difficult.
What is a 401k? What is a Roth IRA? How do you budget? How do you save?
Well, that's what they need to do. That's a big problem with many people. People just, you mentioned before why people don't have money in nightclubs. They're spending. People are so disorganized as far as self-budgeting that they don't have the paper in their pocket to go out and buy a drink because they
mismanage their money.
Well, so it comes back to all of that. So,
Steve, you look like you're pondering. What would you like to say?
Well, I would say you make a very good point about being financially literate, because these are decisions you're making every day. How often are you making decisions about parabolas or arcs and chords and geometry?
I spend much of my day pondering parabolas. No, I'm joking.
But there are people that do that. So you can't. It's important to know. Well, again, if you're talking adult education, is really important to ponder more complicated or more esoteric mathematics. But that's very important on a lower level, of course. So, adult ed, I guess, is a different situation. You're trying to get people to pass to get a high school diploma. That's what they're there for, right? I imagine.
Well, also English second language.
Right, that too. So you're dealing with so it's not, you have a lot of immigrants, so it's teaching different things. It's not where you have to learn those things where it's building blocks to. That's another thing that's wrong with, in Europe and in Asia, they are focusing on higher mathematics and more esoteric things, and they're more advanced as far as culturally. So, it's very complicated.
All right, Steve. So in 2019, you're running the entire adult ed program nationwide. Tell me what you would do.
The first thing I would do is change the testing system. One thing I would do is have one high school equivalency test where it's graded on a normal distribution. Now, 2 of the 3 tests are so difficult for the test taker that they're graded to a point where you have approximately a 20% chance of passing any part of it just by random guessing. So the first thing you need to do is have teaching and learning going on in the high school equivalency classroom. You can't continue to have a situation where in order to make a 45% or 50% pass rate on a test, you have to lower the number of correct answers, where you have to be the teacher telling students, just look for about 20% of the questions that you can answer correctly and be sure to guess at the rest and get another 20%, 20 out of 80 there, the other 80 points, A through D multiple choice, and then you'll get a diploma. So you need to have a situation where the level of instruction is at a level that can be learned and taught, rather than telling students, look for the ones you can do and then be sure to guess at everything else. That's one thing. A second thing I would do is not overburden the classroom teacher with standardized math and reading tests where that becomes the sole goal to meet the state report card. For example, New York State, there are 3 items on the report card. Did you give the math or reading post-test to the student? 1. Did the student make the gain to the next level? 2. What is the percentage of students taking the high school equivalency who pass it? So then the incentive becomes keep the students away from the high school equivalency test because they might not pass it the first time and then lower the pass rate. For many years, students took it as often as possible until they passed it. Many times more than half of my graduates, and I estimate to have had over 1,000 graduates in my years of teaching high school equivalency.
But the state wanted you to have 1,007, so you were a failure.
Well, I think the failure,
Joking.
I get it, but I think the failure was that the state wanted me to have 100 graduates with 100% pass rate rather than have 1,000 graduates with whatever the pass rate was. And I couldn't tell you that since it was completely unimportant. Since every other area of life, failure is good. You learn from it. You make corrections. You build up your score in parts, the way the high school equivalency test is graded cumulatively. So instead, you withhold people from taking the test until they've made a gain on a math or reading test, or until they've gotten a certain score on a practice test, which often differs from how you would do on an actual test, which is twice as long. There are so many flaws in how it's structured. I'll give you one more. You were talking about making the educational gain. So let's say you test at 5.9. So then you make a 1/10 of a point gain in your math or reading. So you've now made the educational gain at 6.0. But what if you started at 6.0 and you raised your score to 8.9, which is 2 9/10 grades higher, which sounds very good in a few months, but unfortunately, the next barrier is 9th grade. So there, if you didn't make the gain, it's just so absurd. It was set up by people in the Congress who have probably never been in a high school equivalency
It always comes
classroom.
back to Congress.
Captain Billy passed high school.
Half those guys are semi-literate in Congress. No, really.
But I mean, the issue is not only that they're semi-literate, but in terms of regulating adult education, they're overqualified. Many of them are attorneys or corporate people who are really not connected to the people that John and Evan and I have worked with for so many years.
So I just want to go back to, you got 1,000 people through their GED, you would estimate. 1,000 people. Teachers have a profound effect on folk, and I find that on various news programs, media, social media, teachers are demonized in this country, and they're off all summer. They get paid all summer and they're not working, and I think we should kind of change that whole vibe, because I find that the vast amount of teachers are incredibly hardworking. You're a teacher, you're a secretary, you're a psychiatrist, especially with kids, as John will tell you.
Well, that's changing, I think, thankfully. I mean, it's not as bad as it was 10, 15 years ago, which was a political move on, because of monies and pensions and things. So it was, trying to point the blame at somebody. That's really what it all came down to.
But to this day,
I think it's changing.
To this day, you turn on, I don't want to make Jim feel bad, Fox News. You turn on Fox News, they go, these teachers are trying to get $40,000 a year. How dare they be this greedy, like in the Midwest somewhere? I mean, it's ridiculous.
But thankfully, not everything is, is Fox News. If you read the newspapers, they're talking about, there's been several segments, I know that the Times, on what second jobs teachers are doing.
Second and third jobs.
Second and third jobs to be able to pay the rent. And then they were talking about people being able to afford housing on various city-type jobs in the city. So, I mean, to point the blame at people that
How about paying teachers more so you get the best people working with your kids?
Well, I thought that's what was.
Right?
I mean, that's
Of
certainly
course.
I mean, it's a big problem throughout the country. Maybe in other countries too. I don't know. Maybe it goes back to that whole thing when we were a kid who, nobody wanted to go to school, so it comes down to still hatred of the teacher. I don't know.
The average teacher with kids, 3 out of 4, you're a math guy, 3 out of 4 will survive 4 years on average. 3 out of 4 kids teachers will leave elementary or high school,
it's
whatever.
a whole different ballgame.
So obviously this is not easy. Steve's 27 years old. Obviously, teaching has taken its toll on him. Yeah. But anyway, it's not easy. You have
if you think of city jobs like a cop, although if most teachers are not being shot at every day, cops, they let them. You can get a full pension after 20 years.
a lot of cops leave at 45.
Yeah, I mean, that's a whole different, ball of wax, but it's still a city job. They're treated very differently. Transit, everybody's treated differently.
But I mean you're teaching, you're trying to control 35 kids. You have a bottom 6th grade class. Little Jimmy is hyper. He's bouncing up and down like a ping pong ball. So you go, Jimmy, sit down, and he stands up. Jimmy, sit down, and he stands up. Sit down, and finally you go, Jimmy, what part of sit down don't you understand? And in the middle of all this, you have to get the testing and mountains of clerical work, and the supervisor's bothering you, whoever it may be, and it's not easy. So why not credit these people rather than demonize them? It's not an easy gig.
That is true. I've read surveys that the people who have the highest scores in college or the highest SAT scores generally avoid teaching. That many of the people who go into teaching are not really from among the highest qualified of the college graduates. That it is not a desirable field at this point.
I'm going to tell you guys a tragic tale. In about 1985 or so, I had a bottom 6th grade class, a miserable principal. I was making $21,900, and I said, kids, have a nice Christmas. So this was 33 years ago. I never came back, and the kids are still waiting in that room. It was 33 years later. So, they must have been like, where's the teacher? Well, the teacher left. But by sheer coincidence, I fell into adult education, had a wonderful career working with adults who want to be there. The students are there voluntarily, and it was a whole different ball of wax. Although towards the tail end of that, the micromanagement and everything else became a bit oppressive, as Steve will tell you.
There's no question that it changed quite a bit. And the day that I can never forget is September 1, 2000.
Don't name names and don't blame the guilty.
September 1,
Yes.
2011, when the high school equivalency became closed to most of the students, whereas before that, students had open access to the test through the program with no restrictions on math and reading testing, no restrictions on practice testing for the high school equivalency, where the high school equivalency became about data collection and not about helping people. That's one of the times that comes to mind. But the overall mindset used to be that teachers knew something, that teachers could share their own curriculum with other teachers, that teachers could be free to do their best work and not be overburdened by data collection or by spending hours and days on bulletin boards for the one day a year that some superintendent or state official might visit the school.
One of those congressmen.
Or one of
Yes.
those congressmen.
A nice bulletin board. I find that the vast amount of teachers deeply care. They're there for a reason, and many of the supervisors are good people too. But it's filtered down. They're getting pressure. They're putting the pressure on the teachers. The teachers have this deadline and this mountain of clerical, and it's a system that is deeply flawed, even with a lot of people that deeply care. It's very complicated. If there were a genie and you had 3 wishes, tomorrow's school, whether you're a kid, whether you're an adult, whatever the case may be, the adult's there. He or she wants to learn, deeply wants to learn, improve their lot in life. What would you change tomorrow?
Excellent question. One thing I would definitely do is change the state report card. Instead of a percentage basis in terms of high school equivalency, make it a raw number, so this school is credited for getting a lot of people to pass the exam, rather than a useless high percentage that excludes people. That's number one. Number two, what we used to do, we find out the student goal and we work toward that goal, whether it's employment, whether it's getting into college, whether
There should
it's
be
getting
more internships for students to get experience as well.
No doubt about it. It's ever more competitive outside of the school, out there in the work world, and that would definitely be a connection that...
How long have you taught?
I've taught since 1979, and I'm still teaching part-time, so I would say that's 39 years.
39 years. So my question would be, instead of a politician who knows nothing about any of this, why don't they pick your brain? Why don't they, guys like you who have, as I said before, devoted their life to this, you have this, what happens outside the class, clerical, statistics, numbers, is totally different than the reality in the class. They should have a guy like you as an advisor who can tell them, honestly, this is what's wrong, this is what's not working. And they need more guys like you, I would honestly say.
Well, I've tried to reach out.
I can feel your anger.
I have tried to reach out to these people. I have written long single-spaced letters to political officials.
Try double space.
To people at the state education department. I've done advocacy, and most of my efforts are just ignored. No one wants to engage any of the ideas that I have based on my experience and day-to-day knowledge of what goes on in the classroom.
Why would they want to talk to somebody who has 39 years of experience? And you were a union rep, so you see this from all different points of view. Why would they possibly want to talk to you? 39 years.
I think they would want to talk to me. Well, I think they should want to talk to me, because the better that we do in the classroom, the better product that's produced for work, for parenting, for parents helping their children in school, for more qualified people entering training and entering college. So in the long run, it's really good for these wealthy people who own companies and run things to have a more literate and knowledgeable society.
There you go. I can feel your anger, frustration, love for what you do. I'm sitting across the room from you. I could sense you really wish that there were certain changes that would be instituted, and hopefully, they'll be more open down the road, because a lot of it works, a lot of it doesn't work. I mean, simple as that. You've changed the lives of 1,000 students, and then there's students that fall through the cracks. It's always going to be like that. So hopefully the people with the power will listen and learn from people that have done this for 4 decades. Even myself, I started teaching in 82. I've been out there a long time.
That's right. I'm really looking at the mirror when you're talking about the work teachers do, because you were a dedicated teacher for decades in addition to all the media work that you do.
Yeah, and you love the students, but you still have a lot of pressure. There are good principals, there are bad principals. There are good assistant principals, there are god-awful assistant principals. It's the nature of the beast, and they affect your morale, and you ultimately do what you can to help your students, but there are things and people that can work against you, and unfortunately a lot of teachers leave at a young age because the pressure is too much, and people have to be open to a dialogue. It can't always be us versus them, because I've had some wonderful principals also. They're not all evil incarnate, but although I have had a few. So, Steve, anything else you'd like to add to wrap this up? Because we're going to have a poetry set to lighten the mood here.
Yeah, the last thing I would add is when people think of a teacher job, a lot more happens than just the time in the classroom. A lot of time is spent over the summers writing curriculum. A lot of time is spent outside of school doing data collection, doing planning, contacting students. And the teaching job is not just the time spent in the classroom. And I think that's a mistake that people make in not fully valuing the work that teachers do.
Teachers should be heroes instead of guys shooting a ball, throwing a ball. This society has things ass backwards. I'm sorry. Every once in a while you have that great teacher who changes your life, and you change the life of 1,000 or so people. It's it's a blessing. It's a blessing.
I hope it's still possible with the constraints of the system for teachers to still be able to go to their best efforts to help students where they're not held down by a system that gives teachers no options, gives teachers less than their best chance to help the students and do the best work possible. Because teaching used to be one of those fields that you mentioned earlier, where a field that people liked going to work, that we were in that 20% or so that got in early, stayed late, and liked every minute that we spent with the students, and we couldn't wait to go back at it because we were supported by the administration. We were allowed to do our best work, and unfortunately that has changed to a large extent in many but not all places.
Steve Mason, thank you for your 39 years of teaching, and we're going to have a big party for the 40th. There you go. There you go. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much for inviting me into your great eclectic program, Evan.
Thank you. Appreciate that. And when we come back, John Winnell with a live poetry set. We'll be right back. The Evan Ginzburg Show, VillageConnectionRadio.com.
It's gonna be the end of me. Run now, rush, 'cause he's gonna get the best of me. You'll see. I favor the force of destruction. I need you here to properly function. Without you here, God only knows what I'd do. I keep bidding until I'm confronted. I take fire to all that disrupts me. I'll take fire until it'll take me to. 'Cause all I need is the spark to break free. Oh, it's gonna be the end of me.
a night to shake it off, another night to make it all. Feels so exciting. A hot kiss could start a fire. Whatever it is can make you high. You never miss.
All right, we're back with the Evan Ginzburg Show, and we are honored to have John Winnell back from Amsterdam with a poetry set.
I'd like to dedicate this set to the Tree of Life Synagogue in Pittsburgh. This first poem is called The Cold Return of Night. Brisk shadows brush dimly lit leaves. The cutlass of twilight has wielded its blade. Cool breezes encompass everything. There's a chill in faces of strangers, a wrinkled apple, the touch of a hand. Bright colors surround as the moon illuminates with silver light. Rhythms change and birds that align hidden branches are silent. There's mystery in each simple breath, now visible, tempered with frost. The reaper culls what the sower tossed. A crisp chill of autumn has finally lifted the veil of summer. Crows have returned to treetops, gazing upon blue revelries. I listen at the window, marking time with shadows. I return to the familiarity of my lodgings, soft smells and touch of afternoon and evening. Time reveals everything. What was lost, discovered and overlooked, as a letter, winking in pale light, offers unseen textures and inflections which had been forgotten as the wind. All those deceptive glances, gazing into the harbor, Yolene's face is reflected in the window. A single candle burns, and the flame enriches her eyes and skin with amber and orange flickers. She seems to understand, looks into my eyes for what appears as hours as everything goes quiet. She whispers about Van Gogh and other secrets, and I want to walk with her down to the water's edge. I call for her at night, grasping at darkness, and turn on the lights to reveal that she was never there. Her memory is as a fog, unrevealed, masking water and land. Somebody calls my name. I feel as vulnerable as a feather. Falling through the trees, boats journey up the river towards the city. I hear her voice in gatherings outside the window, but like the fog, soon dissipates with a gust of wind and the burning rays of the sun. And this is about, well, it's a couple of things, but it's called The Broaching 263 Prinsengracht, the Anne Frank House. On the wings of the equinox, I arrive in Amsterdam, cold and rain-swept. Thought we'd see the northern lights waiting in Reykjavik. The air is frigid. The cold North Sea blows fierce as summer is exhaled. Dancing somewhere near the canals, a little girl plays with shadows, laughs as she twirls and gazes her reflection in twinkling light, copper and gold coins that hover and spin with eternity's grace. Such is life in the city. It's been more than 1 year since my mother's passing, a child born of innocence on the same day as Bertolt Brecht, just 36 years later. Would have been 8 years old the year Anne and her family sought sanctuary. I have pictures of a smiling girl who could have been in Europe, less her father's emigration to America from Hungary by steamship in 1921. Perhaps he felt the electricity of hatred in the air, the ferocious winds that would topple Europe and most of its Jews. The boats wait, tied quayside to show tourists the famous canals. In the square behind Westerkirk Church, Anne hears hourly bells until they stop ringing one night in 1943. Anxiety is a motivator. Inside this somber-lit building, smells of spices, brine, and tobacco permeate cloth-covered walls. The front offices of Opekta, Otto Frank's business, where behind a movable bookcase, a secret apartment that hid the family for over 2 years. A daily journal would free her restless mind, let the world into private shadows, revealed as silver liquid to dance upon the waves as Botticelli's Venus on a clamshell. What of time? One young girl's diary, a lasting impression of hope and devastation, questions without answers, why so many went into hiding or were sent to their death without committing any crime. I gaze at the wall at girls with smiling faces, hopes in their beautiful eyes. The wounds of history can never be salved. Yet in Amsterdam, boats still glide the canals, and the bells at Westerkirk once again chime. My mother is frozen within the earth, her body emaciated, collapsed, a life lived in hope, and in the end captive, afraid to leave the confines of her home, which was long ago cracked by bitterness and anger. There is no cure for man's madness, only quietly lit rooms from which we can briefly escape. Just want to I'll read one more, and then I just want to read my poem for Van Gogh for Amsterdam. It's called Loss in Letters. Travel blurs the senses after exciting the eyes, ears, and lungs. Time is illusory, lost in gained hours of places never imagined become printed as memory. Evenings seem quiet, familiar sounds are enmeshed with new images. Siren songs are now versed in history. Each time a book is opened, I see places that have become familiar yet unknown, as a face that may have breathed laughter, now frozen like a canal in winter. And this poem, just to the memory of all those wonderful people at the Van Gogh Museum and everywhere else in the Netherlands. It's called Van Gogh's Cypress. And I thank Evan and Jim and everybody that's Van Gogh's Cypress. Pungent odors of earth emerge through infinite amber fields. You stop to watch a cloud of menacing crows devour insects hidden between reeds. Amber and pear blossoms open, fragile buds, aromatic temptations to intoxicated honeybees. Alone you scratch lines and planting tendrils like a jackstraw. Ever so keenful eye, the sower tossing seed, miners emerging from a soiled pit. Harassed by light and exhaustion, you flood onto white canvases. A cypress stands in a wheat field, a lookout for predators, the foolish sun, the incessant nagging of flowers. Worn out by drinking, you return to that yellow house whose cracking green floor and red blanket are surrounded by silent objects which seem to have fallen from the sky. plagued by murderous dreams, you return to the garden to wrestle with angels. Yet unlike Jacob, you awaken destitute, bothered by the sun whose presence hisses through the window slats, announcing another day's struggle with the wind. Thank you.
John Winnell. The Amsterdam Suite. There you go. So that'll about do it for the Evan Ginzburg Show at VillageConnectionRadio.com. Thank you to Jim Savali and Village Connection. And Jim, anything you want to plug as far as the station?
Nope, just getting ready for this last show.
Oh, we have another show. So tell us what's coming up after this.
The Joneses are coming on. Let's kick it with the Joneses.
All right, so we're going to bail out of here because the...
Brian and Steve, right?
All right, so we'll catch you next week, folks. That'll about do it.
They're all dead. The lines cut off inside my head. I left here like a broken man with no idea of where I stand. Oh, my mind clear. Oh, I shed all my tears. Oh, now baby, I was just waiting here while you moved on. Security, this newfound freedom you kept from me. The sound of all your loaded guns. This outbreak war has just begun. The sound of all your loaded guns. This broken man has already won. Oh, my mind clear. Oh,